Welcome to the second part of this episode of Dead Genre Chronicles. We are now going to discuss the game for the month, which is The Legend of Dragoon. The Legend of Dragoon is a PlayStation game developed and published by Sony in the era between Final Fantasy VIII and IX as part of the wave of first-attempt JRPGs that characterized the PS1's place in the genre's history. The team that worked on The Legend of Dragoon had previously only put out Ape Escape, and their next game was working with Team Ico to produce the eponymous PS2 game, to give you an idea of how late in the system's lifespan this game came about.
Well, I couldn't finish the game, so I played my long-standing Resonance of Fate Joker on this one, because I played the entirety of Resonance of Fate so that Devin didn't have to.
Did you know there's actually a similarity between this game and Resonance of Fate? That's really funny.
Go on.
Both games feature a serial killer protagonist. Okay. They do. They actually do.
They do.
Okay.
Less appreciated similarity between fucking this game and another is Rose. It has a dragon named Michael, which is also true of Zero, whose real name is Rose, in Dragon Guard 3. Yoko Taro jacked this game so hard. I'm kidding, of course. But I made that joke when I was streaming, and I was just like, huh. So ages ago, I petulantly refused to put up with Resonance of Fate, so I can't blame Becky for actually having trouble with this game.
Yeah, so to be clear about what the problem was, in this game, every basic attack you have, it's called an addition. That's why I joked about being bad at math 2 hours ago. I didn't think it was going to be 2 hours ago.
I didn't get it. I was like, I'm bad at math. I'm actually really bad at math.
I knew it was never going to work, but when I thought of it, I had to go for it.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you. And what it is, it's a timed button press mechanic, right? You press the button at the right times and you get more damage.
Well, you get more hits in a combo.
You get more damage because in kind of late disc 3 of 4, where I actually really couldn't do it anymore, a full chain, when I managed to pull one of those off, or when I used the Ultimate War God to bypass the mechanic, was like 250 to 300 damage. And what I was usually getting, which is 1 or 2 hits of 5, was giving me 50 to 60 damage.
Yeah.
So as far as I can tell, the way it calculates it is a certain amount of the combo's damage is allocated to each hit, and then if you complete the entire sequence, you then get the bonus of the addition on top of that.
Actually, I don't even think it's calculated that. I think earlier hits are weighted less than later hits, so you get more damage the deeper you go, and if you miss early, then you get very little damage. Because I'm doing an attack that has 7 hits and ends in 1,000 damage, and if I mess up my first hit, I'm only doing 80, so it can't be just a stable line of attack or damage.
But I mean, the problem is, if you can't do the buttons, and I have some objections to the way the timing was indicated, although also I maybe had emulator sync problems that weren't helping. If you've got a mechanic where some players are going to do 20% of the damage of what other players are doing, you cannot balance the game, right? That's just too big a variation.
They balanced it assuming you're landing every edition. That's what they chose.
Yeah, it certainly felt like that to me. And I don't think they are, probably. I think there's probably a lot more leeway in it than that.
The leeway is that if you're not great at the editions, they're assuming you're using one edition you're good at, I feel like. But they're still assuming that you can land this one edition that you picked.
But then that prevents you from unlocking further editions.
Yes, it does.
Just the damage is so low, and every encounter becomes so long, and you're getting murdered by just random squirrels in some godforsaken forest on the way to the dungeon, because it takes you 7 turns to kill the cussed things.
The thing that frustrated me about that is the AI scripts in this game they're binary, basically, based on how much life an enemy has left. So if an enemy's in critical HP, they will spam their strongest attack over and over and over and over again. So if, for example, you're using Shanna, or you messed up your addition, then you're going to take a lot of punishment at arbitrary times based on how much HP a certain enemy has.
Either that, or they'll flee, or they'll heal.
Yeah, but I was just like, can you randomize it a little bit? Do they have to always use the strongest move when you mess up? But
basically, I found it a very punishing, very demanding experience to play, to an extent that I just I'm not very good at timed button press mechanics anyway, and it was completely inaccessible to me.
Meanwhile,
So yeah, I didn't finish.
I shredded this game. I ate this for breakfast. I would play it again. I'm real good at the timed hits, I guess. I'm also the only one who played it on, like, a PS3, which might have been part of it, because, like, Lyra played it on a Vita, Becky played it on emulator. I don't know what the timing difference is. I also wasn't paying attention to the indicator, ever. I was paying attention to when the hits they were landing actually connected with the enemy model, or were meant to.
I think that's actually what they're going off of too, because the indicator is so fucked up.
Yeah, the problem I have with that is that I could not track the attack motions clearly enough because my eyes kept being distracted by the motion of the indicator. I also think there are sounds for the attack sequences, but the sounds aren't cues, and I tend to rely on sound cues for that sort of thing. So the sound was throwing me off as well.
Like I wrote in the Discord that sometimes I had to press X when the indicator was almost in the middle. Other times I had to press exactly when it's the middle, and sometimes it's okay to press it a long time before the middle. Like the window actually changes for every input on every attack, and it's different every time. Which I tackle these things very rhythmic, and so I was able to do Dragoon editions before I could do normal editions because the Dragoon edition was the same every time. I just had to memorize the exact rhythm I had to do it, and I could do it with my eyes closed. But since the timing windows and how the indicator worked with the normal edition changed every time, it was just a very long learning process for me with each edition. Once I was able to do it, though, I had like a very high success rate, like once I learned them, but it would just take me a long time. Like,
yeah, like the ones that I was able to get the hang of eventually, I got nearly perfect at. But there were some, the ones that I was, the 4 and 5 hit ones that I was learning towards like the end of my time with the game, I was getting 1 in 50 right.
Yeah.
And you can't learn at that success rate.
I had a period of, I don't know if it was 1 in 50, but when I first got Darts Master Edition, I don't know what to call the last editions.
Blazing Dynamo Final Edition.
Final Edition, that's a good one. Okay. When I first got his Final Edition, I had like I was basically failing every single time because I would just get a little bit deeper every time and then forget how it worked, and then I'd just get a little bit deeper every time. And so I got access to it. I think I would say the City of Magic, and I was able to actually do it when I got to the third one, the City of Death. So it took me that long for me to actually be able to do it. But then I didn't really have any issues with it once I had it down. It just took me extremely long time to learn the specific timings on each one of the hits because each one's different.
The least useful comment is, well, the one I'm going to have. I just never had an issue with it because I knew that hitting based on the actual, like, Becky had issues with inscrutable combat in Kingdom Hearts 2 as well.
Oh yeah, like I'm bad at action games generally. But this specifically was an obstacle.
Yeah, my point is, like, the inscrutability of, like, I've learned to tune stuff out, like, visually, which can be a detriment when I'm trying to look for something specific and I'm just mentally tuning it out and being an idiot. But, like, I tuned out the indicator most of the time, but I also, anytime the camera wouldn't go behind my characters, it would fuck me up because I needed to be able to see that over the shoulder stuff.
Yeah.
I found that the shifting angles threw me off regardless, to be honest.
I moved the camera like every boss fight. Like I liked how the angles looked, but it doesn't work with the mechanic. I always had to shift it back. And sometimes they'd force shift it after a boss does a cutscene move, and I'm just like, oh.
They force shift it when you transform into a Dragoon, which is just like, no, please. The other two characters aren't Dragoons. Let me live.
And I don't know if this means anything, but like I can play Greengrass High Tides on Expert and Rock Band. I'm actually pretty good at Stepmania. I could play like extremely hard songs. So like I would expect I could actually play this game pretty well, but the indicator's so fucked up and bad. It was just like every single time.
Those are music games.
Yeah,
those
but it's rhythmical. It's rhythmical.
Not in Dragoon.
Yes, it is. How I learn it, Devin, I just do this. I just remember the exact timing of each press, and I just do it like that every time. I don't like.
Except they're super arrhythmic, except for Maru.
Exactly. It's like weird when I'm doing it. That's why I compared it to prog rock. I'm like, these are really weirdly arrhythmic, and I'm having a hard time learning it. And I have to play with the sound on. If the sound goes out, I can't do them because I'm playing off of the sound and stuff like that. And it was just, that's what I'm saying. It was really hard for me to learn these. That's why I had a big learning curve because I had to do it based on the sounds and rhythm it was doing, and they didn't have a rhythm. They're like polyrhythmic, fucked up attacks.
Yeah, and the other thing is that they don't build on, like, a character's additions don't build on one another.
They're not actually additions. Yeah.
Each one is a completely different set of inputs. So every time you start a new one, you're completely set back to stage one.
The final edition actually incorporates like most of or some of the other editions, but all the other ones are just completely random different attacks.
Yeah, like the only like addition implies that there's a base to work off of, but they're just combos. Like, the term is bad, but this game is localized bad. This game is localized like Wild Arms 2.
This game's localization is
hilarious, actually.
It is hilarious.
I don't know, like, I actually found myself weirdly appreciative of it. Like, it's not a good localization in terms of translating into natural English, but I think that the style that they end up in is there's a consistency to it that still kind of works.
I'm glad someone agrees with me on this, because I say this a lot when something is badly translated and people are just like, no, it's bad, and I'm like, but it's kind of interesting, right?
It's not unintelligible.
Yeah.
Right. It's very, very rarely like, what the fuck are they saying?
And the thing about Legend of Dragoon is it doesn't have like a contemporary fantasy setting, so it doesn't need to have like clear English respect, because it's already really surreal and just like a different world than these games are normally typically placed in. So I didn't really feel like the English was jarring, even though it was like wrong.
It can be poorly written prose. That doesn't mean it's not evocative of something.
Yeah.
And this game is very 90s Sony. Like, this is a weird-ass game that I've said this before on stream, but I played this in a Walmart once. It was one screen that I got to see, and it's early in the game when, like, Lavitz is talking to these two refugees. And he's just like, hey, go to my house. My mom is always, like, she has guests a lot because when I'm out doing my fucking soldier work, she gets lonely. So go there, you'll have a good time. And, like, I just remember that scene because it's, like, this really pastoral scene after getting chased by a bunch of guards. But it's just stuck with me. I saw it when I was, like, 8. And I saw it, like, again in the game, like, 6 years later, and I was just like, whoa, this is that game I saw in Walmart. Now I know what it is. I can play it. I didn't finish the game, but it's memorable in really weird ways that are specific to some 90s-ass games.
I think overall, I didn't like the battle system, honestly. Because, I mean, what you're doing, like, once you get final editions especially, your final editions actually do more damage than Dragoon editions. So every turn you're just going to be doing your final edition. And you can actually finish the game doing your final edition every turn and then just using a heal potion when you need to heal, and that's the extent of the interaction going on.
Yeah, like, the battle system's not good.
I'm okay with, just I have to attack and heal as your bread and butter in an RPG. Like, Dragon Quest is great, but that's not what I'm doing. I have to do this 7 input minigame every single time I do a normal action like attack. And that makes...
It's incredibly demanding, right?
Yeah.
You have to concentrate so hard on it for it to have so little... I guess I feel that there are times where you can do something with that. Like, if combat demands massive attention, you can make that work to a point, but it can have a meaning. But I didn't feel that what the game was doing really connected with that at all. Like, it doesn't make sense for combat to feel really laborious in this story.
I know Devin didn't like Resonance of Fate, but I think it's really hard to perform combat. Like, actually, it was expressing something. And Legend of Dragoon is just like, this is a neat idea we had, and we're going to do it.
I mean, I did say this in the Discord, but, like, the director was the battle designer on Super Mario RPG. They literally jacked a dude from Square to make this game.
I guess that makes sense.
So, like, the fact that he would bring along timed hits is just kind of, like, indicative of that. But, again, I'm the one who is good at video games. I humble brag as I go, no, this game, I think...
Well, I don't think I'm bad at them, right? I don't like...
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying anyone else is. I'm really used to this game, and I don't know why. Because every single other time I've tried to play this game, I had so much trouble with the additions. I don't know what's different this time. I just felt it this time, and I don't know if that was because I was streaming, and I felt some need to be good at the game for once, instead of, like, just letting myself settle for not being good.
Like, I got through Bloodborne without, like, the gnashing teeth a lot, like... And I think I may have done better with additions if I didn't use the indicator. I don't know, but like the game told me, use the indicator. Here's the indicator. It's straight up in your face. So I played the first couple hours with the indicator, and I didn't feel like I could really go back without practicing all my additions over again. I was like, I'm not doing that, because at least at that point, Lavitz has a lot of hard additions because he gets them early.
Like, it just gelled with me. And sometimes that's just a thing that happens, and I can't really explain it away, but, like, the most I have trouble with was, like, roses, and even then I didn't get, like, super hung up on it because I just didn't use rose, because, like, at that point I had Maru, whose additions have a rhythm that I felt, because Perky Step is fucking jamming.
Roses are really weird and staggered, because I used her through the... Once I got to disc 4, I was looking at my party members, I'm like, alright, I'm just going to use Rose, even though she's awful. And actually, it paid off, because she gets the best weapon in the game at the very end. But, yeah, her additions are actually easier for me than, like, Hastrel's, or... Well, no, Hastrel's are just really hard for me.
Hostiles are just really weird, because, like, okay, on some point, like, you want to have combos in quote-unquote real martial arts. You want to have combos, like, strings of attacks that aren't really predictable, but then you have, like, fucking Dart that's just like, I'm going to move my sword in a triangle for 4 strokes. Which is just like, please stop. Hero! God damn it. And then also, like, his final edition has him kicking the enemy in the face and doing a front flip to finish. Just like, that's an opening. But hostiles are, like, really off-putting because it feels like, sure, this is meant to, like, actually involve, like, some sort of, like, actual martial art timing, but it's fucking hard because it doesn't gel with anything else.
Yeah, they're really fast and irregular, and I spent a long time trying to get his Hex Hammer down, and I'm just like, why did I do this? This took longer than anyone else. And yeah, I never got his final edition either.
I also didn't, like, bother using him. Like, he got all of his editions. I was just like, okay, I'm not using you, though. I'll keep you on par with the rest of the party because I know I'm gonna need to fight someone with you at the end of the game. But yeah, I don't know what was different this time. Maybe I've just been slowly honing my secret craft of the most useless skill of being good at single-player RPGs over the last fucking decade.
But so as a baseline, these editions we're talking about, they generate ASP for each hit, and depending on your Dragoon level, you can stock up to 500 SP, and once you have at least 100 SP, you can turn into a Dragoon, which will, every turn you're in Dragoon state, consumes 100 SP. And the only way to use magic is when you're in Dragoon form.
To be a Dragoon, yeah.
Yeah, and leveling your Dragoon form takes an obscene amount of SP. I used most characters from, like, I just rotated them for most of the game. When I got to Disc 4, I used Rose for all of Disc 4. And when I got to the end of Disc 4, she still didn't have her 5th Dragon spell, because I just didn't have enough SP, so I had to grind for a little bit to get it. So I don't really understand the scaling there. But regardless, that just means you don't have a lot of tools at your disposal at any time when you're fighting a battle. You can attack, use an attack item, turn into a Dragoon, and use one of 3 spells. And the only way to change up what you can do is to change your characters, but then the characters, like kits, are never really that interesting. They can do an attack spell, and that's it.
I think I've said it before, the only interesting character is Maru, because she has a heal and, like, attack all and attack single, which is just like, that should be, like, normal. And, like, Lavit / Albert are good because they have defense. So basically my final team ended up being Dart, Maru, Albert, just because that's a good mix of shit to have. And also Albert does massive damage.
The other thing to quickly mention on this point is the number of items you can carry is very strictly limited.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't even carry a lot of healing items, which would be fine if you had magical healing as well, but you don't.
I mean, you do.
You can.
Well,
you can choose
not
to.
very much.
The problem with fucking items is the item limit gets even stricter if you pick up any of the repeat items, which are once per battle, but, like, they're useful, but also I don't want them taking up inventory space. So it's just like, okay, it's a good thing I have the Psych Bomb X was the raddest shit, because I could do fucking 5,000 damage to a boss.
Yeah, I kept
but also
that
it
one.
took up, it's so good. It's
And
filled with courage.
There's no bank to keep items you know you're not going to use in, so anything you pick up, you've either got to use or chuck.
And none of them stack like in Breath of Fire, which is the biggest pain in the ass. Like, if there was any stacking, it would be an order of magnitude better.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, at a certain point, if you're using certain characters, you can get away with not using items, but depending on your party makeup, depending where you're in the game, you need a full stock of items. Like, I had an experience when I went to the Helena prison for the second time. I didn't buy more items, and I fought the boss there, and that was my first game over. I was like, well, I didn't think I'd need a full stock of potions, but apparently I do, because these boss fights take like an hour each. And you don't have reliable healing. You can cast a couple of healing spells at that point in the game, but then you're out.
In the ghost ship, I had Shauna go down, because she was in the party, of course, for the boss. But I didn't restock on revive items. So I only had like 2, and I used them both reviving her. And then she didn't get the experience, and it was just like, well, the fuck. Like, if there are myriad tweaks I would apply to this game, like showing a turn order. That would be cool.
God, yeah.
The way it generally spills over is really frustrating, because a boss can just act 3 or 4 times. You're just like, how did this happen? Why is this happening? And you just don't know, because there's no turn order. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would also make it so, like, maybe you could use specific Dragoon magics outside of Dragoon form. Like, fucking, the healing would be nice to not need... I say that, but fucking Shauna can just generate like 400 fucking SP with one attack, so it's just like, oh, you want healing? Okay, here's healing.
What they could do is just make the Dragoon spells cost more if you're not in your Dragoon spell. It's like kind of...
Yeah,
but,
like, I'd be fine with it.
They have to do this really restrictive, weird system instead.
Those would be my two biggest things. And then, like, I would also make it so that all the female armor wasn't the shittiest thing. Also, the girls can have normal HP growths. That would also be nice. But also the defense on female armor is just abysmal for some reason. For the reason you'd expect, actually. Not some mysterious reason.
The mysterious reason is RPG sexism. So I'm going to say, before Devin cuts in with how good he is, the game's actually pretty hard. In the sense that if you don't go out of your way to circumvent the difficulty, or you find yourself like missing additions, you're going to have a rough time, and you might even find yourself losing battles. What you can do at a certain point in the game is grind a lot and buy these magic casks. I don't know if they do, because I wasn't going to grind that much.
I bought 3 of them by the end of the game.
But apparently they make magic do like no damage, which... That's what mostly does damage to your party is AoE magic.
Here's the fun thing. There's also a paired piece of armor. So basically, the Legend Cask fucking gives you 100 magic defense and also 50 magic avoid, which means 50% of the time magic attacks will miss.
That is...
just entirely.
Wow.
It is disgusting.
Yeah. And bosses like to use instant death attacks, and it's not telegraphed if they do or don't have them. And also, sometimes bosses can just shut off your Dragoons, and sometimes it's actually in the lore, and you should have known this, but you're dumb like me. But sometimes, like the final boss, you could just be, everyone's in Dragoon, and then all of a sudden it can just block Dragoons, because it's the last boss, and it can do that. And you're just like, well,
the last boss is literally God.
I lost the fucking game. I didn't lose, though, but I swear I was going to. And it was really crushing, because that boss takes like an hour or something.
I was gonna say, there's a paired, like with the super helmet, there's also a paired piece of armor that also costs 10,000 to pop, so have fun with that.
But if you don't get those things, bosses can just flat out one-shot party members, especially if they're girls, because of RPG sexism. And it can be really intense and slow going to get your party back up to speed and to try to do damage while you're taking massive amounts of damage. So it's not like a comfortable walk in the park, and you have to be landing those additions every single time.
Here's where I say I didn't have any trouble with that, and there's video proof of that.
I mean, I only got 2 game overs, and one of them was an optional boss, the Divine Dragon rematch. But I felt inching close to game overs, and I pushed my luck a lot of the times because I was just like too lazy to do real strategy because I've been healing for like hours, and I'm just like, I don't want to fight this. He's HP red, right? I'm just going to attack him. It's going to turn out. And it turns out I get lucky every time, but...
I think the boss design is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
In terms of like tuning them to be difficult. It's just that they could have been as difficult without the addition system, and the game would have felt more accessible. It would have still felt just as hard. It just wouldn't have been quite so teeth grinding.
Mostly I was just making an observation. But this is one of the only times where I would have felt less bosses would have actually been better. Because not all of them are hard. Some of them are just like you just spend a lot of time hitting something. And there's a lot of them. There's just a lot. Sometimes the game just wants to communicate with just like scripted events or just like a straight series of bosses. And you're just like, okay, I'm fighting a lot of bosses. Which I like sometimes, but not like constantly.
Bosses are also the main source of experience.
Yeah, you can't really get XP without the bosses, which is Chrono Cross-ish. It's like the opposite of Chrono Cross, but the same idea. But I guess this also wouldn't be so bad, except that it's a PlayStation 1 game and everything takes an hour. Like every cast animation is just like, you can't watch it after a certain point. You're going to be looking at something else because, it's a Final Fantasy VII cast animation. They're really jerking it out there and you're just like, well, cool. I don't know. I just casted the spell and I have to watch the same thing again for like a minute.
Yeah.
Set spell to cast, go away, make tea, come back.
I think at one point I actually got up and got a cup of coffee while Maru's heal was going off.
I mean, I straight up made ramen. I was just in the main ramen during a cast one time, and they're just like still doing them. So.
Yeah, like one of the tweaks I would make would be the fucking have a short mode for cast time, because you can turn like transformations off except for specials, which always be like, hey, this is special. Look at this animation, even if you have those turned off. I'm not saying this game's battle system is unassailable, but I found it entertaining.
It's interesting, and it's unique, so those are good things. It's very slow-moving, and sometimes frustrating, and so that's the trade-off.
Yeah, like, it could be balanced around not having additions in the game. I also don't think it would have been as interesting for me.
I think I would have been able to complete the game if it had been... So... The addition has a percentage, right, as its like value that increases the higher level it is. If the addition is like 200%, if you got 100% damage regardless of what inputs you did, and then only got the bonus if you correctly completed the sequence, I think that would have been okay. Like, I think I could have handled that.
I don't even believe
It's that I was only doing 20% damage most of the time.
I don't even believe in gating. Like, there should just be an option in the options menu. You can just turn additions on or off. Like, that'd be cool.
I think that'd be the modern approach to take with it,
Yep.
definitely.
And I would complain about additions all day, and I'd still leave it on because that's how I play games. I'm like, wow, this sucks. I'm going to play the whole game like this. But it'd be nice to have that option because Isn't Throw Bob in our chat also complained about the exact same thing Becky ran into, that he bounced off the game. He couldn't play it for like pretty much identical reason. The additions didn't make sense to him. They felt laggy, unresponsive, couldn't figure them out, and could play the game in the end.
Yeah, I don't know. I've tried to play the game on emulation and I had issues with it. I tried to play the game on PS3 and had issues with it. Something this time just clicked for me and I don't know what it is.
And I actually really like the game. It's just every single part that doesn't necessarily have to do with the combat, and so it's like unfortunate in a way.
Have we covered the combat now? Should we move on to...
Yeah, the story's really long and not all of it seems especially relevant, so I don't know what exactly to recap necessarily.
Okay. There's a war between two halves of a continent, or a country, I guess. Sergio, the South End, captures protagonist's girlfriend. He goes and breaks her out of prison, in the process befriending a knight of the North half. They go to the North half, and they talk to the king. His name is Albert. Then they contribute to the war by killing a dragon, and then they save his girlfriend from poison. They save her from poison by turning into a dragoon, which they found out about before killing the dragon.
You save her a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
The entire game is just saving her. Like, the final boss is just, let's save Shauna. Dart is the main character, Lavitz is the knight, Shauna is the girlfriend. They meet Rose along the way, who is, like, this black warrior. She's not black. She's dressed in black clothing.
There, yeah.
Dark Warrior.
I'm just recalling that fucking Sword Art Online screenshot. It's just like, that black guy is just like, no, that's a dude in a black trench coat. Get it right, please. God, that localization was awful. Anyway, they go to a tournament because there's a tournament in the town where they saved Shauna, and they meet Hoshel, who is an old mentor of Dart. And in the tournament, they face off against Lloyd. He is too good. And then they find out that King Albert has been captured and taken to Helena prison, and they're going to sacrifice him, basically. So they go to rescue King Albert. Lavitz dies in the process, revealing Lloyd with a dragoon-killing sword, and he takes something from Albert, the Moon Gem. Then the Mantle of Dragoon is passed from Lavitz to Albert, who becomes your Wind party member for the rest of the game. In pursuing Lloyd across the continent of Endiness, which is still the silliest name for a continent, a peninsular continent, what happens next?
They stop the world ending and endiness. Sorry, I just sitting here.
Yeah. They go to Fletz, and then on the way, I think they get their Dart gets his Dragoon spirit stolen, so they have to go on this little side tangent to get that back from the bandits in the Valley of Corrupted Gravity.
And when you get to Fletz, the princess has been replaced by an imposter.
Yeah.
And the imposter is working with the bandits, so you have to kind of wrap all of that stuff up together. And you get back, and it's revealed that the imposter is also working with Lloyd.
Yeah.
So it was relevant, despite all feeling like a massive unnecessary diversion for no reason.
Yeah. Also, they are both Winglies, who, according to the lore of this game, were the overlords of the human race that kept them subjugated until 11,000 years prior to the start of the game, when the Dragon campaign happened and humans won their freedom in a revolution. The moon objects, which Lloyd is pursuing, are remnants of Wingly power, though it's not revealed until a bit later what their purpose is. So they pursue... What's her face? I forget.
Linus, right?
Linus, yes. The Wingly, who is also a Dragoon. They pursue her via ship, in which they encounter a ghost ship, and have a weirdly irrelevant to the plot ghost ship encounter, which I feel like is a weird qualifier, but it's revealed that the ghost ship was originally 18 years ago, was where the twin princesses of Mille Ciseaux were being spirited away to keep them safe from the Black Monster.
The proper nouns.
Yeah, the Black Monster is a thing Dart has been pursuing for 18 years. It killed his parents and destroyed his village of Neat. After that, Rose and Dart get shaken off the ship. I didn't mention Maru or fucking Kongol at all in this. how tertiary are they? Until Disc 3 when Maru is relevant. After that, Rose and Dark get shaken off. It's revealed to the viewer, the audience, that Rose is actually 11,000 years old. And she knew Dart's father, who is also 11,000 years old. Yes. Because they were both part of the Dragoons working during the Dragon campaign. They meet back up with a group and they fight Lennis and take her Dragoon spirit and kill her dragon. And then Maru is a Dragoon now. And then they go on to Milsuso. God, then they go to Deningrad.
You forget that, like, at the end of the storyline in Flets is the big, like, romantics, like...
Oh, fuck, you're right, yeah.
Forget, but,
for Dart and Shanna, because then when you get to Milsuso, Shanna is immediately replaced by somebody else, or almost immediately replaced by somebody else, because now that she's an actual canonical love interest, she can't possibly be involved in the story.
I mean, she is involved, but not... She's involved as, like... a plot point and not a character.
Yeah, she's damseled.
At the very least, it's Shanna's decision. But I mean, I have like Shanna's character is really transparent, and I'll probably talk about it because it just rubs me the wrong way.
Okay, yeah, like they go back to Flets to get their send off before they go to Milsuso, and like there's this whole thing where like Albert's romancing the princess there, and then Dart and Shanna have their moment together. Then they head to Milsuso. Oh, by the way, I think it's the Moon Dagger in Flets that Lloyd gets from Lennis, but another moon object. So they reach Deningrad, but Rose splinters off to go visit Neat, pay her respects to victims of that.
The Black Monster.
Yes. And then Maru splinters off to go to her home, the ancestral home of the Wingleys in the forest. So then they head to Deningrad, and then the Divine Dragon shows up because it got woken up somehow, because, God, they don't...
I think it was literally just the seal wore off. Yeah, it's arbitrary.
Yeah, like Lloyd even just like, what the fuck? This wasn't supposed to happen. This is pissing me off. But yeah, they go to Deningrad. Divine Dragon is unleashed. They show up to the queen like, hey, we're Dragoons, we can take care of that. Miranda, the like, order captain for the like, Holy Knights or whatever the fuck. I never fucking understood what that entire faction was. But, like, she's the first sister. She's got royal authority or whatever. She's tantamount to a princess.
They seem to be religious to Soa, because Miranda sometimes, like, reminds us, I'm religious to Soa. I wonder what Soa meant by this. But it's like, it's never really stated very clearly. It's just like, you're supposed to assume.
Deningrad is the home to the religion based around Soa, the creator, which is, like, actually the creator. It's there. And the entire creation myth that they tell you about with Soa planting a seed that gave birth to 108 species is true. It's actually the crux of the game. Anyway, they get to the Deningrad, Divine Dragon happens. It doesn't full-on attack the city yet. They go say, hey, we can handle that. We're good at dragons. And then Shauna wanders into some side passage. They go back to find her, and she is kind of just focused on this weird thing next to the throne room called the Moon Signet, and she's just like, oh, fuck, I can't be a Dragoon anymore. And then Miranda gets her Dragoon spirit, and it's the most arbitrary thing, because they couldn't transition her out of the party very well.
They tried to, like, do some backwards... I don't know, like, it feels really weak, but Rose makes an offhand comment that, like, Shanna was found out or realized that she was the Moonchild, and she wanted to bear the burden by herself and not tell anyone. Like, that's what Rose says. And it's just like, that's a lot of leaps. That doesn't really happen like that, but okay.
Yeah. This game is not thoroughly well written.
A lot of things happen, but it's not carefully plotted.
Yeah. So then they go to the Forest of the Wingleys, because they need the Dragon Block Staff.
It's literally called the Dragon Block Staff.
It blocks dragons.
It blocks dragons.
Except it doesn't. Like, it doesn't apparently do anything.
Well, it's like...
It just breaks.
Oh, wait, it doesn't even work. That's right. Or it doesn't necessarily work.
I think the idea is it works, but it breaks in the process.
Or the Divine Dragon is so strong that he's still extremely strong after he's blocked. That's just like, well, that didn't do anything.
There's nothing in the game to make it feel palpable that it makes a difference.
You would have to fight the Divine Dragon first and have him one-shot your party, then you could have that interaction happen, but whatever.
I mean, like, also, like, if you turn into a Dragoon, all your stats drop to fuck all in that fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that it affects you is cool. It's just, it doesn't seem... There's nothing to give you the idea of what change it's made in the dragon. That's what's missing.
I turned into a dragon in that fight too, because I'm a genius.
It blocks dragons, goddammit.
I didn't do special though, or I would have game overed.
Good.
Which is what almost happened to me against the last boss. But
oh boy. But yeah, so they go to the land of the Forest of the Winglies to get the Dragon Block Staff. So they go to the Forbidden Land where it's kept. Then, in the process of returning, they realize that Deningrad is being attacked by the Divine Dragon in full force in order to destroy the Moon Signet. So they get teleported back to Deningrad and help with securing important persons. And then they run off to the Mountain of Mortal Dragon, which the location names in this fucking game are wonky.
The Mountain of Mortal Dragon is one of the better ones.
Valley of Corrupted Gravity is also just real good, but then it has
Valley of Corrupted Gravity is legitimately good. Mountain of Mortal Dragon is terrible, but in a great way.
They hit a Mountain of Mortal Dragon, which has 3 screens that all use the same exact graphic, but represent different tunnels. I hate it so much. They fight the Divine Dragon, then they go back and find out that in the process of them returning, which has taken a week, which is like the only like time representative scale that they offer in the entire game for how long travel takes.
It actually threw me for a loop too. I was like, that was a week? That was a week? What? How much time have I spent? How long has this been? But I don't know.
But they get back to Deningrad. They're like, hey, we killed the dragon. And then it turns out Lloyd teleported in and kidnapped the queen. So they go fight Lloyd. They go through a glacier, climb up an old Wingley fort, and fight Lloyd. And then Dart refuses to kill him, and he gives him some details on where Emperor Diaz, his boss, is being kept, or waiting for him, basically. And then they go there. Then it's revealed in the series of like most rapid fire fucking reveals that Rose is the black monster and has been for 100 or
11,000 years.
11,000 years. 2, she's killing the Moonchild every 108 years because it's actually the soul of the moon that is reincarnating every 108 years in an attempt to reunite with the moon. Because it turns out that 3, the moon is the god of destruction that Soa created so that he could wipe all life from Earth and restart. And 4, fucking Shauna's the Moonchild, the twin princesses on the ghost ship that the Queen Fury ran aboard were Shauna and her sister, and fucking Rose killed the wrong one. And also, 5, Emperor Diaz is actually Zieg, Dart's dad. It's just like...
Dart's dad and Rose's former lover.
Yes.
And 6, he's actually possessed by Hitler.
Pretty much.
This is gonna I think this is gonna offend Becky, but one of the reasons I like Legend of Dragoon is it feels like the dumbest version of Razefn of all time, and I actually really like I just like that aesthetic. I like that it's doing all this
Oh wait, Razefn?
Yeah, Razefn.
As in the anime?
Yeah, as the anime.
No, I totally see that. I mean, I've got quite a soft spot for Razefn because Razefn is also bonkers, but
it pulls out this. It just creates this whole mythos trying to go off its own aesthetic, and it focuses on spherical objects a lot. It's just it's bonkers, and the things it says are just bullshit. But it's they say it so confidently, and it has this it's cohesive and consistent. I'm like, whoa, okay, I guess.
Yeah,
I kind of see what you're getting at, actually. The way that Razefn treats the kind of its mythology of the Mu civilization, which comes out of a crackpot anthropology theory from the 19th century. It's yeah, you know what? Why not have it? Run with it. And I can see the link to some of the use of mythology in Legend of Dragoon. I don't object to the lore in this game, but I also didn't really connect with it. Partly because of when I switched from playing the game to watching it. It's so hard to focus on this game when you're not playing it.
I can also say the issues it presents or the kind of drama it has is actually incomprehensible. No one has a frame of reference to be oh, I'm an 11,000-year-old immortal serial killer. I'm just okay, I don't... What am I supposed to get out of this? I have literally I can't feel anything toward this character because it doesn't make any sense.
Mm. I'm an 11,000-year-old serial killer who has a crush on my lover's son.
My stepson! my inverse stepson. Right. And it's not great to say a Japanese game doesn't make sense, but Legend of Dragoon is pushing what's actually relevant for a person to be person to read in a story. It's just like, what the fuck?
It is absurd. Not like capital A, but it's just absurd.
I guess actually, so the one thing that it was building that I was interested in was the romance between Dart and Shannon, because it's very explicit early on that this is going to be a romance, we're going to tell a love story, and it gets to like halfway through the game, and they declare their love, basically. They say, yeah, we're in love. And the reason for latching onto that is that it doesn't matter how balmy the rest of the game is. If you have the most straightforward love story at its core, it works fine. FF10 works like this. FF10, if you take out the love story at the centre of it, is too many damn things to keep track of, and it's a miracle that they work. But because it's all built around this really effectively told love story, it hangs together. And Legend of Dragoon could have done that, but in the second half of the game, rather than continuing the love story, which would have been really interesting to see two characters who've agreed to a commitment to each other but have to keep going on the adventure. They can't have their happy ever after yet. Shanna just gets put in a box.
Yeah, they just consider it resolved with the confession of love. It's like, all right, it's over. It's just like, that's the least interesting part, but okay.
Yeah, but like if it had had that core, I think it would have held together much better.
See, I think like the catastrophic explosion of lore is the best part of this game because it's just such a fucking spectacle. It's just like the moon is the god of destruction and God hates you and he's going to erase you and we have to kill your sweetheart or she's going to revive the fucking god of destruction. Oh no, it happened! You have to kill him now.
I totally see what, like, I agree with Becky, actually, but I also, like, part of me feels like you can't save this. It's at Chrono Cross levels of unsalvageable, stupid shit. And I honestly would argue Chrono Cross has a point to make, even though on the podcast most people disagree with me. And I honestly believe Legend of Dragoon has no point, and it just makes it even like it makes it just a weirder art object because it's just making the most batshit lore because it just wants to, it just has to.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, it might well have been that kind of grounding it in a story would have collapsed.
Much like the tree the moon landed on.
It would have helped, I guess. But there is a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of stuff. There's actually a lot of stories that are happening on the peripheral of Legend of Dragoon that are not grounding. You can decide for yourself just because there's a lot of dialogue crammed into it and a lot of attention paid on the side characters who are sort of relevant to the plot at hand. But we could finish with a recap of Disc 4.
Disc 4, you go, oh fuck, the moon.
Yeah, I mean, you go around to all the ancient Wingley cities and you try to stop Zieg from destroying the seals on the moon, basically. And you don't stop him. He destroys each seal every time because it has to go that way. And then you do the final dungeon, which happens inside a place that can render it inside their minds, and so it happens inside the party members' minds for an indeterminate period of time, which is really interesting, and also just it happens for just because.
I don't want to make the fucking Majora's Mask comparison, but it's basically the moon field of like, this is a non-literal as fuck space.
And it's really cool to process their memories in that space, but it, unlike, say, when you're inside Cloud's mind in FF7, there's no like greater point to it. There's no resolution to it. You're just doing it because it's cool, I guess. I think the resolution to each character's arc is really good. I just don't know. It's just like kind of contrived that it happens in their minds just to do that plotting, I guess.
It's kind of the Rogue Galaxy problem.
Yeah, but Rogue Galaxy's like way crappier about it, but yeah.
Yeah, Rogue Galaxy didn't really give anyone an arc except for fucking Deco.
It like fucked up everyone's arcs and actually didn't have any reasoning behind it happening, just that it just happens here. It's going to happen. Just like, oh, no, it's happening.
Yeah, meanwhile, like, you could probably read, like, the entirety of the Moon Dungeon as kind of like a Persona 3 Nyx, you should want to die, tell me why you don't want to submit deal. Yeah. If you really wanted to dig deep in there. But I think it's just a neat series of things.
So like a reason I like it a lot is partly because, like, the best part of the game, inarguably, is the art direction in Legend of Dragoon, which is... It is fantastic and astounding. It recalls like contemporary video games. It recalls Final Fantasy in a lot of ways, but also recalls horror art and surreal art, and it takes interpretations on like fantasy things like dragons I haven't seen anything except like really bad weird things like Naruto. Like it is post Evangelion in a sense in that it's like trying to make things evocative at the cost of like traditional appeal, but I think it like really works out in favor of the game. and environment. Like I guess for a good example is this is a very specific example, so I can communicate what I'm talking about. Is Dart's Divine Dragoon transformation is this his limbs are very large, especially like his weird winged one, and you can see the texture on it is like actually kind of ugly and gritty and dirty, and you can't actually make out Dart's figure when he's inside the Divine Dragoon, and the name Divine Dragoon would imply that it's something celestial or heavenly or appealing to look at, but it's actually just this really clusterfuck, horribly designed monstrosity of a thing, and you can see the scale of it when Dart holds Shanna in his weird wing arm. That Shanna's just like kind of small, and there's this giant, like horrible looking arm. Like
he's got this like Resident Evil 2 William Birkin hand.
Yes, just like cradling her, and you're just like, what is this horrifying looking thing? And Rose says like a really bad writing line, like dragoons manipulate the power of madness, which is like, okay, it's ableist, and but you could feel like you feel an undercurrent of like non-traditional or even horror aesthetics fueling a lot of the designs in Legend of Dragoon, which is like really compelling to me because it puts ugliness at the forefront of a lot of stuff it's doing and presenting, and it makes the game feel more weighty and tragic as a result, even when it's just really dumb. It has this really convincing art style that I can go along with it.
The Rose line about how like, humans need to tap into madness to fight wars is just like, it's weirdly optimistic about the human race to say that fundamentally, in order to wage war, you have to break yourself of like society to inflict this on another human person.
It has bad implications too. Like it's reductive and it's boring. It's boring and to explain human nature, but it's kind of like evocative for explaining how dragoons work, since they're not like human things anyways. It's like you're mind building with a dragon and you go kind of feral, and that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's like Super Sentai, right? The concept of turning into dragoons, but they kind of make it like...
Which is why the leader's red.
Yeah, but they kind of make it ugly, horrifying, and they fuse it with fantasy, and it's just like... just a very volatile and interesting combination of stuff.
Yeah, I just wish the combat bit of Dragoons was better.
The first couple hours of the game also like really annoy me, just because there's... They hold off on lore a lot, and they drive the game based on like, I've got to save Shanna. Like they put that as Dart's like only motivation, and that's just really grating to me because there's nothing to it except I have to save the girl, which is like, it's fucking video games. And I didn't complain about it much because I didn't want to judge a JRPG so early in the game, but it lacked, at that point in time, it lacked framing, character motivation, and a sense of setting, which the game gradually lets into those things and just makes it like a really bad first impression, in my opinion. But what really started annoying me during the same period of time is once you get Lavitz and Shanna in the party together, they keep making exaggerated, over-concerned comments about Shanna's ability to be with them, and they're like actually sexist comments. And it's not just like one time, right? It just like keeps happening over and over again, and it goes into borderline harassment when they comment on how great of a mom she's going to make. It's just like, what the fuck? How long have you known her? It's been a couple days, right?
Well, not with the travel fucking scale.
Not if that travel fucking scale generalizes, because there's
it's
like
been
a week
year
for every dot on the map.
It's been a year.
Which is an interesting idea, right? I wish they'd lent into that more and said, oh yeah, these journeys are all like months long.
And Shannon, like, she tries to speak up for herself, but like the game makes her really weak in battle, so you sympathize with the guys being dicks. You're like, oh, they're right, she sucks. And I'm just like, oh, that's not good. Why does she suck? Why does she have to suck? In fairness, like, Dart eventually stops making comments like those once, I don't know why, he just, like, decides, like, well, I'm being annoying to Shanna, probably. And Shanna can become, like, one of the most overpowered characters, even though she's not allowed to be in the party. But, like, it'd be easy to fix. At a certain point in the game, she could just, like, have someone teach her how to use the bow, and she can use additions. Why can't she use additions? I don't know. It's because she's the girl.
I mean, bows don't really do combos. It was always the read I got. It was like, she gets better at firing it, and she gets more SP out of it. But like, unless you just like have it upgrade so she does double shot, or get her.
The thing is, you fight an archer that does literal combos. And I'm just like,
it's stupid bullshit though.
And we've definitely seen other JRPGs that have like combo doing archers. You could make it work.
This is 1999.
Anyways,
Raven hadn't come around yet. I just wanted to say that like, there's an item in the last fucking dungeon where like, oh, now Miranda, who replaces Shauna, I didn't fucking mention Miranda. I did, but whatever. She can attack all characters or enemies now. Like, that's just a thing that happens. Why couldn't that happen earlier?
Yeah, I don't know. It would have been good.
Yeah.
But like, so most of the characters in the game get to be as strong as an army. It's implied when they fight literal armies and beat them. So I come to feel like the only reason Shanna is so weak is to make the player sympathetic with Dart's point of view about Shanna.
Because they fucking do that with Maru and Rose too. Like, those are glass cannons at best, and just glass at worst.
There's no excuse for Rose being 11,000 years old and for being bad at combat at this point. Like, I know she has to level up with the rest of the characters, but she should be on par with Dart, right? Not like
at least
dramatically worse, which is like, what the fuck? But anyways, I'm still on Shanna because I think the reason she's like that is just so the player playing Dart can have have a hard-on for protecting this schoolgirl, basically. I feel like someone writing the game just really likes girls like Shanna, or really wants to have this fantasy play out where he gets to play as the strong man that protects the girl, and I'm just like, at a certain point, I'm just like, oh my god, you just keep doing the same, you keep regurgitating the same lines, put Shanna in the same situation so Dart can be like, I got this, I can protect you, and Shanna goes, oh, thank you, and I'm just like, oh. So, that's why actually, I would like to see the relationship played out better, but as it is, I think the relationship sucks. I felt sorry for Shanna. Like, their entire relationship is about various ways Dart controls her life and wants, and Shanna just goes along with it because she's younger than him, and I don't know, because Shanna's just written that way. And Dart has like the emotional maturity of a child. Kongal is more measured and insightful than Dart is, and he's a racist character. Like, given all the interactions that Dart and Shanna have, I don't think it could rest on the laurels of them being childhood friends, because it's just not convincing enough that to me that because there's no grist, basically. I don't get to see any reason why Shanna's attracted to Dart except that they are, and and when I say that, I say that because Dart's a blockhead. And he's immature, and he's a boring character, and so I'm just like, why? What is this? It's just uncharismatic and flat.
Yeah, like, if you built this story around, like, the love story, like you were mentioning, Becky, I think, like, it would take a different set of characters. Like, these two characters especially are not deep enough to, and not relatable enough as a relationship to, like, form anything around. And I never thought they were going to, because Dart is an idiot. And he's always been like, the first 3 hours of the game are just like, I'm Dart, I'm reading a newspaper, there might be war today. Oh, look, a war. Oh no, a dragon!
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for the kind of story I was envisioning to work, the second half of the story would have to be the development of the characters, right? It'd have to be, okay, what is it like for two people who are in love to learn how to live together? Which is a story that, it's not just video games that don't ever tell this story. Literally no popular media ever tells this story, because when the couple get together, that's it.
Hey, I have an anime for you.
The sexual tension's over, right? It's done.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is kind of one of the things that, you know, Buffy is a very embattled property, but Buffy actually tried to do this. Like, 3 or 4 relationships come to a head and then continue in Buffy. And they continue in misogynistic ways because it's Joss Whedon, but at least there's an attempt there, and it connects with a sort of reality. Whereas the Hollywood thing of the romantic resolution being delayed until literally after the story is over, games are long enough that you could do a game that worked like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't like making a joke when I said I have an anime for you.
Anime is different.
Anime is good.
Well, yeah, it's actually true though. Anime actually has a higher hit rate at this stuff.
Anime reaches topics that video games are too afraid to.
Mm-hmm.
More anime video games, please. Oh no, monkey paw curling, no!
Okay. God. Sword Art Online 3.
No, literally already happening. Fatal Bullet. It's a third-person shooter, too.
Is it the third one?
Yeah? There was fucking Hollow Fragment Realization, and then the fucking other one, yeah.
I mean, oh, sorry.
I mean, the only true anime video game we need is the Air Gear one, which really would be everything that's wrong with the idea of an anime video game.
Don't you mean Sonic Riders?
Oh! I think I mean Jet Set Radio Future.
No, I think you mean Sonic Riders. Anyway.
I would just say, seriously, the game becomes Rose's story, and that's why I talked about how Rose is hard to empathize with, because she is. And I liked Rose's story more anyways, and Dart he doesn't really get any character development. Like, he doesn't learn how to love Shanna convincingly. Like, he doesn't learn how to let her be her own person. And he doesn't have any reckoning with the kind of powers.
To be fair, the story doesn't let her be her own person either.
I know.
Like,
that's
circumstances.
the problem there, really. I'm just saying Dart's a terrible character in along a lot of words. And he doesn't have, like, all the characters kind of, like, have this thing about them they're grieved by and they're driven by, and they kind of come to reckoning with it, and they let it go, or they reflect on it at the end in the mind prison. But Dart doesn't have anything like that. Dart just keeps plucking along because he's Dart.
Yep.
Dart sucks.
Well, Dart's thing is supposed to be, like, it's supposed to be sorted when it's revealed that Rose is the Black Monster.
That's true.
Who he's been seeking revenge against. And there is this scene where he says, like he gets his sword out and waves it around, and then says, right, the Black Monster is dead now, you're not the Black Monster anymore, so you can keep traveling with us. And, like,
I feel like that's
after the point I stopped playing, so I can't really assess how it feels in context, but it felt flat to me.
Dart just stops talking. Yeah, that's really flat. I mean, I feel like the point really resolves when Rose dies, not when Dart forgives her, because I don't think you can forgive her. It's just like her circumstances too weird.
I mean, like, the whole thing is, like, they were ostensibly traveling across the giant desert, and at some point, Rose was just like, fucking kill me already.
I think that illustrates more that Rose wanted to die, and she's been looking away to die the entire game. But
and Dart's an asshole.
But but she's too honor bound. Like, she could never kill herself, and she's like, well, here's a point where I could quote unquote kill myself. Hey, Dart, you always wanted to get revenge, right? And Dart's like, nah, not really anymore.
Shit happens. That's the result.
I mean, but yeah, Dart sucks.
Yeah.
I could complain about a lot of things, or I could go to the point where I get to my bullet points and try to salvage the game. What should I do?
Fuck, if I know we're already fucking 3.5 hours deep.
Which one?
Let's get to the salvaging.
All right. It's kind of weird points, because, again, I said the game has a lot of stuff going on in it. And, like, I could talk about how this game relates to the past. I'm not going to, because it doesn't. But you could, like, deep pull something there and, like, talk about how the game reveres history and revises history all the time. And there's just, like, they're always like, well, that thing that was passed down through generations was obviously a lie. And that happens a lot, and it's interesting, and that's not what I'm going to focus on. But what I mean is there's a lot of things going on in Legend of Dragoon, because there's just so many things that happen that you could get any number of things out of it. So I'm going to tell you just the random things I got out of it. And so, like, the characters that end up hurtling to oppose a fascist person that becomes a god happens. I used to say this doesn't happen in RPGs, but I guess I've been encountering a lot more lately, and it kind of happens a lot in RPGs. It's more meme-fied because it happens a lot because popular games do it a lot, but you know, but the thing is, like, especially in a game like Final Fantasy VI, I think the games avoid challenging fascism on a moment-to-moment basis. They're like fighting for their lives, and they want to overthrow the kingdom because it's bad, but they don't really go into the details of why the kingdom is bad. They don't really talk about how you live without fascism or before or after it. You know, you're just gonna topple the empire because they're bad. And it occurred to me that Legend of Dragoon's optimism pushes for cohabitation and understanding between peoples. It's a version of violence and forgiveness to those who do great wrongdoing, even when it's expressed in cheesy ways like Shanna healing a wolf. Like a lot of stuff, a lot of the emotional beats are just really corny. But they happen so consistently and so often that it's like acknowledging the interpersonal gestures that encourage peace among people and go against fascist organizations, like how they happen organically instead of like after they're done. And so, like, when you fight Hitler God, it's kind of just a guitar solo and all the work the games are doing the entire time, and it's not the crux of the whole thing, unlike Final Fantasy VI, which I don't like. So to echo that fact, there are people who do horrible things to Legend of Dragoon, and some of it's just like on an interpersonal level, like Miranda's dad or Haschel, who is in no small terms he's an abuser. It's just the game doesn't make it explicit. And then there's like more political things to think about, like the relationship between Dole and Carlos and Lloyd's actions, which actually aren't that interesting, but they're kind of that same area. And then there's really huge in scope and incomprehensible things like Wingley's controlling how people go into the afterlife, and Rose killing thousands of people over 11,000 years. But all these things, even the things that are impossible to understand, are considered on their own terms in the fiction and are given room for the characters to reflect on them and grieve about them, as Miru grieves about her legacy as a Wingley, and Rose is having existential angst about being this impossible existence. So, like, the worst things that the games do, like especially the points about the Wingleys, they're not rendered, besides the last boss, they're not rendered like evil cartoon characters. They're people that are convinced that they're right in whatever messy and selfish actions that they take. And Haschel's probably the best expression of this, and he's the most subtly written character, because, like I said, he's an abuser without a doubt, because there's no other reason a daughter would run away from home. Like, I can't see under any other circumstances that she'd just run away by herself, except that he was emotionally abusing her, and maybe even physically. And it's revealed in a way that would, in a worse story, that would like make Haschel more sympathetic. That there was a possibility that when something went really bad, she killed someone she was sparring with. It's a possibility she got possessed by a war god, which isn't explained, just pops up. And that's the reason she killed someone, so that she was kind of the problem in the situation. But instead, I feel like they put a spin on it, and they say that Haschel never respected her wishes as a person, and he berated her at all times. And every time she said, I don't want to do this with my life, Haschel says, well, you have to. As my daughter, you're going to do this. And, he would yell at her and criticize her constantly because he, quote unquote, wanted the best for her, but she runs away from home, right? It wasn't a good relationship. And Haschel's whole character arc is him being really pensive and sad, and because he fucked up his life, and he's a portrait of an abuser, and he never gets this point where he's like, oh, finally I can rest, or I finally have closure. He never has the point where he rests because he knows he can't be forgiven for this thing, and he never gets that moment really. So what I'm saying is, when characters go too far in Legend of Dragoon, the fiction passes judgment on them and says, you're not going to get out of this clean slate, you're going to be living with this. And that's why some characters end up dying, like Dwell and Rose, and that's why Haschel's sad even after he resolves this thing. He actually doesn't resolve. He can't resolve it. So through all the dumb stuff in Legend of Dragoon, and its horrible plotting, and its wastes of its time sinks, I think one strength it has in its plot is actually creating complicated characters and just letting them romp around and do random stuff. It's not really a strength, but I think the amount of multifaceted parts of the game, moving parts of the game, ends up siding on the side of human goodness and strength. And so when Legend of Dragoon has a lot of outward ugly expression and just bonkers, tragic, and violent plot lines, I feel like it's just letting in this duality of things. And Legend of Dragoon is a supremely absurdly and hilariously tragic game, but it's brimming with righteousness and what people need to do to make things better. And so despite its rough edges, I can't help but love it. It's through the good and bad, you gotta stick to what you believe and keep on living. That's everything I got.
I take your word for it that stuff's in the game.
You could easily argue it's a deep pull, right? I'm just
that's not what I mean. What I mean is getting the game secondhand as I did for basically the final third of it. None of that was apparent to me, but I was limited in the engagement I was able to make with it. And I think it's a convincing read of the stuff that's there. So I'm not going to say it's. I'm trying to say this without expressing doubt. I'm just saying that I didn't get any of that at all.
Well, I think it's really easy. A lot of what I'm doing is letting the aesthetic influence how I'm interpreting things too. Absolutely. And it's, even though I said there's a lot of things that happen, it's very brisk paced because it's not a focused game. So a thing will happen and it'll be a couple of sentences. You can either say, well, that has a deep resonant impact, or you could be like, that wasn't developed at all and that was really sudden. I don't really appreciate that kind of storytelling.
Well, also I didn't get anything from the aesthetic the way you clearly have, and I think this must be a later game thing, because certainly for the things I tend to look at with environments and with visual design, it just I didn't get much of a response to it. I thought the FMVs were compelling.
The one where they showed the Dragon campaign is an amazing FMV.
The big one, it's sort of is it before you go to the place where you get the dragon block staff from? Yeah,
it's after the ghost ship and they crash land in Rose reminisces.
That's right. Yeah,
that one's
pretty cool.
Fantastic.
And it's you compare that to how the environments look, and you see where the budget went. I think because the environments are either really generic or just kind of confusing. They don't read well visually, even with the markers up.
Oh, they don't. Actually, the towns are aggressively illogical, but I think that contributes to the kind of surreal feel I got from the game. Because, it's not trying to be nothing's trying to make sense from a visual point of view, and it's not because they're trying to make this kind of surreal nonsense game. That's what it ends up becoming. Yeah, and I would say there is a flat 50-50 of just really boring, you're going in a forest and it's a forest environments, but then there's also the wingly ruin places where it's just these minimalistic, jutting different arrangements of stuff floating in air, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just like that.
Yeah, they did look more appealing, but again, they're kind of late game stuff. So my gold standard for visual design in the PS1 era is still Chrono Cross. There are images from that game that are absolutely etched on my mind, and all that Legend of Dragoon's visuals made me feel was that I would rather be playing Chrono Cross. But you said something, I can't remember the exact words you used, but it was something like the environments aren't really about a kind of visual effect, really. which I think rings true. It's just that that's what I'm looking for and not getting.
I mean, Disc 4 is like consistently expressive, and it actually like it nails the things it was hinting at. But I mean, the best stuff are just like the boss designs, the character designs, are just how like violent, ugly, and frightening everything you do in the game is, despite it being the story of optimism. And it's like masquerading as a traditional fantasy story, but anytime you do anything, it just feels wrong and off.
There are some fantastic boss designs, definitely.
I liked the Divine Dragon having 4 pairs of wings with one ripped off, so it had 7 wings and 7 eyes, and then when Dart turns into Divine Dragoon, he has 7 fucked up giant light wings on his back. Right? Non-functional, of course, because fuck it, why not? There's 7 fucking Dragoons, might as well be 7 wings on this fucking thing.
The last boss designs are just like actual data collages.
Spaceships.
Well, yeah, there's actual data collages of bullshit. Like, they actually have no start, no form, and they don't convey anything, and they're just like really alien and cool. And there's also the couple screens before the last boss. There's just like really complicated arrangements of just squares, rectangles, and it's actually like it's reminiscent of like 1950s minimalism, and I thought that was cool. It reminded me of The Last Dungeon, Last Remnant, and also I guess there's similar in games where they have really bland aesthetics until like the lore drops, and then they have an intense aesthetic for like the last like rush.
Yeah, it reminded me of the PlayStation 2 boot up screen with all the lasers and shit, and I was just like, ooh.
It's vaporwave kind of.
Legend of Dragoon, it's vaporwave kind of.
And
the colors are wrong for vaporwave. I thought unless they change on Disc 4.
I thought even like the Evergreen Forest in Disc 3, though, I thought the game had a lot of interesting shapes, even when it was like the most boring idea possible. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of areas in the game, and not all of them are hits.
Yeah, some of them are just areas, and some of them have like an idea. I keep saying this, and someone out there will get the reference I'm making. All the fucking related to dragon stuff, or like the related to Wingly stuff, like the structures and the life forms that like inhabit the pit below the forest where Firebrand lives. They all look like fucking, like, this is supposed to mean alternate dimension alien thing from fucking Phantasmagoria 2, where there's just like this really 90s ass, like, fucking alternate dimension place that you visit.
But that stuff's inspired by H.R. Giger, right? And I think you could trace that kind of art style to Legend of Dragoon anyways. That's what I was saying when it's like kind of like horror like.
Yeah, it's really, really off-putting to see, like, oh, that doesn't look like anything that's supposed to be alive in this world.
The dragon designs are, Rose like, look at these cute mini dragons. I'm like, those aren't cute. What the fuck are those?
Part of that is PS1 graphics, but also part of that is Rose is fucking weird.
Yeah, she's weird. Rose is my favorite character, like, straight up in that game.
Jesus Christ, we've been going on this topic for an hour and then some.
It's a long game. How many hours did it take, Devin, for you? Because it took me ridiculous.
48?
Yeah, it took me 60, so...
You're always kind of on the sluggish side, though. Not being in it, not trying to put you down. That's just how it turns out.
I did things like on the boat where I talked to every NPC when I was a different character, because the NPCs would talk to the characters differently. I thought that was really cool. Like, you get to see the perception of these characters, which is not a kind of angle of writing you often see.
We didn't talk about the weird fucking daisy chain of player control that happens on that boat.
That is a legitimately cool idea, and I wish more games did it.
Yeah, that is amazing. Actually.
So basically, yeah, you start as Shauna, but like you talk to different characters, and as you talk to them, the character you were controlling then walks away, and the person you were talking to is now the person you're controlling, and they're thinking about something, and they want to go talk to someone about what they're thinking about, so they go do that, and that just happens until you end up talking your way through the entire party, and it's cool. And it kind of gives characters who wouldn't typically have a chance to chat to each other a chance to do so. Like Hashel and Kongol get a chance to chat, which is weird.
Albert and Meru, and Meru throws a pillow at him. That was good. I like that bit.
And I think this game is, we're going to talk about this in the questions, but this game's more similar to Final Fantasy VI than 7, despite, all the things that make it obviously look like Final Fantasy 7. And the biggest weakness in 6, in my opinion, is how the cast is treated in a very unbalanced way. And it's a large cast of ensemble characters, and half of them aren't developed, and they're just there because they're fun gameplay ideas instead of, characters in a story. And Legend of Dragoon, it doesn't stick the landing, but it goes the 9 yards trying to develop each of these party members in certain ways. They have downtime and they talk to each other and they have perspective and they get words in, and they do not feel like they're just gone for Dart and Rose, except maybe at the end, and then they kind of feel like that.
Yeah. I actually want to mention the director, Yasuyuki Hasebe, was the battle designer on Super Mario RPG, but he was also the battle planner on Final Fantasy VI.
Oh.
There's a kind of a reason that gives you that kind of vibe. You probably saw a bit of the shortcomings in 6 and kind of tried to tweak them to his liking. Not terribly effectively, it sounds like, but he tried. So we have some questions, only 3 about this game in particular. We had plenty for the anniversary section, so that's fine. From Proxy, would you say that this game has aged well? If yes, what makes it stand out in comparison to other PSX games? If not, then what holds it back?
I mean, usually when we talk about games aging well, and I don't know if Proxy was thinking in this way, normally we mean visually. And, visually, I don't think it's aged as well as Chrono Cross.
I think it's aged brilliantly visually, but I guess I already talked about what I like about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've come at visually from different angles on this one, I think. I think I'd put it in kind of the FF9 bracket. FF9 is not a bad looking game, but it doesn't have the sheer wow factor of some Chrono Cross screens.
I mean, Chrono Cross is literally some of the best art I've seen in a video game period, so it's that's a really high bar we're comparing it to. And when I think about aging, I would say the localization is obviously product of its age, and it's kind of funky.
Well, I would say to that I think this localization has aged better than some others because it's consistent.
Yeah, I mean,
it's consistent and it's comprehensible.
When I think about aged, I think really specifically product of its time wouldn't happen now, and that's something that's really aged on it though still.
Yeah,
and also how inaccessible the game can turn out to be is that wouldn't happen anymore.
Well, I hope not.
Probably not. At least not from a game Sony develops, right?
Yeah, I don't There's. Is it showing its age, and is that a problem? And those are slightly different questions. I think it's definitely showing its age, but I don't necessarily think most of the problems I have with it are ways in which it's showing its age. In the sense of being things that were typical of its period that haven't persisted to the current day.
It reminds me a lot of Wild Arms 2, where you can kind of put it into a narrative that it's responding to Final Fantasy, and I think both games do it very brilliantly, and they do it in their own ways. They're individual and unique, and I think that's that's the middle bar for any piece of art that you want to try to be hitting. And so, I mean, the stuff that holds it back is just that it's hard to play, and that it kind of holds on to its plot for a long time, which are things that could still happen today.
Yeah, and I have nothing to say because I thrashed it and apparently have good video game luck. I literally never saw Petrification once, and both of my cohorts did.
The petrification thing is brilliant because it doesn't turn the character model to stone. The character lies down in the death position, and then a little rock floats in the air above them. It's so goofy.
I think only 1 or 2 enemies can do it, but they still sell the item the entire game, which I guess they have to, but it's why?
The final boss can do it.
Okay. It's why is it even in it? I never got petrified again, but...
Yeah, it's just there to basically be a KO that's not a KO, so they can force another status cure item on you.
So having a bad battle system is not a matter of age, right? But there was a trend during the PlayStation era with games like Wild Arms 1 where developers would come into the scene making JRPGs and have a really lackluster sense of what makes an interesting, engaging battle. And that also holds Legend of Dragoon back.
I mean...
That's definitely a sense in which we're starting to see responses to FF7 being a thing then, because it's people chasing the FF7 money.
Right. I actually like Wild Arms battles more than Legend of Dragoon in the end. And Legend of Dragoon is longer and has more battles.
Wild Arms 2 is break over your knee easy. because it was balanced for like not knowing what the fuck anything
Wild
does.
Arms 2 is maybe pushing it on being afraid of how well your audience is going to play, but it's also very interesting and engaging, so it kind of balances it out.
I mean, engaging, quote unquote. The game got way too easy after I realized, oh, if I put this rune on my caster character, he can learn this thing and use it every turn that heals my entire party.
Yeah, but it just means that
every
character has their own like specific interaction that doesn't overlap with other characters, and they're all really like reflective of the personality as the fighter, and that's pretty good stuff. A lot of games can't do that much.
I think the problems that it has are not particularly latched onto its age. It could something that has these precise problems could definitely be made today, but for those having been latched onto it, I think this game has aged all right. It's still kind of a nonsense, catastrophic explosion of lore and garbage, and 5 rapid fire bullet points of reveals that made me just like crack up after I stopped streaming that.
I was laughing. I laughed at Chrono Cross. I laughed at this game. I like them both.
So now we get into the discourse. Let's start. From Last Time on Earth on Twitter, people have said that Legend of Dragoon rips off Final Fantasy VII. Is there any basis for this criticism, or is it just bullshit?
Like, there's nothing obvious that is distinctively... They got this specifically from FF7, right? It's a JRPG on the same system from about the same period, but far enough after to have been influenced by it, and FF7's a massively influential game, but ripped off? No.
But Becky, there's a character death at the end of the first disc.
Blonde hair, big sword, silver-haired antagonist.
Yep.
The thing is, the surface things that might be reminiscent of Final Fantasy VII, and they might even be for marketing reasons. Who knows? They're just surface reasons. Like when you actually play the game, the game is nothing like Final Fantasy VII, except that you move through the environments in the same way. But you move through the environments in the same way in Gone Home as you do Doom. That doesn't mean they're ripping off each other. So
tell that to the Gun Home DLC, motherfucker.
But that kind of similarity, right, gets picked up on at a very subliminal level by games audience, because there isn't in the West a tradition of talking about environment design in a way that clearly picks up on you move through the environment in the same way as a similarity. And that leads to all sorts of fucking confusion about kind of genres and inheritances and stuff. So that's probably where it comes from, more than anything else.
Also, just like, I feel like it is more present in the minds of people because it's a first-party Sony thing, which would have made it more appealing, like, oh, this PlayStation is made by the people who made this video game. Maybe I should look at this video game. Whereas, like, Square has a reputation, and had a reputation by that point, obviously. But, like, kind of home field advantage probably helped with that when they were trying to sell it and get it, like... Because Final Fantasy VII had happened, and it was, like, remotely similar, like, oh, it's an RPG, there was going to be comparisons. Like, that... Like... Fucking Final Fantasy VII is just, like, the base point for a lot of people's comparisons to RPGs. Like, fucking everything is going to be compared to Undertale.
Yeah. And that's even more true in 99. It would have been even more true then than it is now, right? Like, FF7 was looming much larger at the time. So I see how that idea gets started, but I don't think there's any substance to it.
Yeah. And I think...
what are you going to say?
I was just saying, based on the potential outcomes of this question as a binary, I think it's just bullshit.
Yeah, and it's like it's the always gamer time sink that you have to pit these games together like they're competing for something and stuff. You can't just like, well, Legend of Dragoon and Final Fantasy VII are both good. I don't even mean it like that, right? Because Final Fantasy VII is obviously better than Legend of Dragoon, but I don't need to. It's not like this competition where I'm pitting them against each other kind of thing. Because the things Final Fantasy VII and the things Legend of Dragoon do are absolutely completely different, despite being in the same genre, right? And a lot of the value that comes out of Final Fantasy VII is mostly because of how it stands as being an influential work, like a big part of it. And so Legend of Dragoon can't, like, it's not the same.
It's like how we aren't gonna try and be direct opposition to fucking the Giant Bombcast,
right?
Like that's
just because we're making a video game podcast.
Yeah.
And how much, like, Legend of Dragoon's like a fucking 50-hour game. How much is put into it and having its own identity? It's not derivative of Final Fantasy VII. It just plays similarly. And that's just like a really...
Like, vaguely similarly.
Vaguely, right? You could see your character on pre-rendered backgrounds.
Yep. Bouncing off that, from Samuel Howitt, when Legend of Dragoon is discussed, it seems to be positioned as an opposition to Final Fantasy VII or similar titles. What do you think that attitude contributes to the discourse? Fuck all.
Isn't that all the discourse, right? You start playing a game and then you're like, Final Fantasy does this! And it's just like, that's the JRPG discourse.
I love how you start sounding a little bit like Kermit when you get really mad.
That's just... Okay, you know how people have like the asshole voice, right? Mine's Kermit the Frog voice for some reason. It's not very like it's fair enough. It's not very intimidating. It's not very like communicative, but that's just like in my mind. That's how every asshole sounds, like that.
I wish I lived in a world where every asshole sounded like Kermit. That would measurably improve my life.
I think the idea is it's the contrarian nerd voice, but Kermit the Frog is also like fine. It's just the voice.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like comparisons to FF7 are rarely useful. Right, they're rarely going to get you anywhere talking about JRPGs because the kind of people whose decision making about video games are going to be massively influenced by FF7 are marketing people and business people, not game designers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that FF7 has hugely influenced a number of game designers, but
they didn't need people telling them how other games weren't FF7 for that process to happen.
Yeah, and like the success of FF7 is a very different thing to the game FF7, and like there isn't much transference between the two in terms of explanations. Like, the qualities of the game don't really serve to explain its success, and its success doesn't really inform accurately about what the game is. So I don't think there's much use to talking about, is this like FF7? There's a use to setting it in the context of PS1 RPGs, absolutely. But there are games that it's much, from that period, that's much more useful to talk about, with Chrono Cross being maybe the most obvious. And
they both sold millions of copies anyway, so I don't know what the opposition is about, except you are a person who doesn't like Final Fantasy VII, and every time it's mentioned, you have to say, well, that game sucks. There we go, here's that different variation of the Kermit voice. But like, I see that all the time, you know, the knee-jerk reaction to Final Fantasy VII being brought up, and it's just like, do you have to do that every time? And that's kind of what's behind the Legend of Dragoon thing, right? Because maybe when the game came out too, they didn't like Final Fantasy VII. Their friends liked it. They latched onto it, and they're like, well, this game was way better than any Final Fantasy game. And that's part of that's how gamers express themselves, like during the console wars days, where it had to be like, my team is better than your team, which is just patently absurd when it comes to art, as long as your teams aren't doing anything like for video games, all your teams, they're all doing exploitive practices, and they're all not like really great people to look up to. So like the artists are great, but the way they interact with the world is not. So your team fighting thing is just like, it's dumb.
My team can be exploited better than your team.
Yep. Like you love the creative people, right? You don't need to fight over Sony or Square RPGs.
Well, I mean, the reason that you end up fighting over Sony or Square or whatever, PlayStation, N64, is because you don't know who the artists are, right? I mean, they're in the credits crawl, but you don't pay attention to that.
It's always been obfuscated. Man, I can't words.
Obfuscated.
That's the word. I will never retry to pronounce words anymore.
Just go for it. One and done. That's the Leroy we love.
We shall have a Zine dedicated to your mispronunciations.
God. Okay. But yeah, gamers are... it doesn't contribute to the discourse. Like, it doesn't. Like, gamers are awful about this still. Like, they're still like, oh, fucking Battlefield is better than Call of Duty, or whatever the fuck gamer bullshit.
How dare they put Assassin's Creed in Final Fantasy? That tarnishes the brand of my million dollar brand? Yeah, the $1 million Final Fantasy brand that just made a tower defense game that's awful.
Fucking worst fucking MOBA gay ever.
Right, we done. Can I go to sleep now?
Yeah, Becky's been up for like fucking...
It's 1 a.m.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, Thanks for joining us for this episode of DGC. Next month we'll have our first double-header episode as we play both Golden Sun and its sequel and our second half, Golden Sun The Lost Age, a Game Boy Advance duology by Camelot Software, otherwise known for the pre-2000s era of the Shining series and the Mario Golf and Tennis series. This is the kind of traditional game that made me realize JRPGs existed outside of Pokemon and Final Fantasy. You can buy both Golden Sun and The Lost Age for $8 each on the Wii U eShop, but you can also emulate them quite easily. After that, we'll be playing Saga 1 and Saga 2. Both are Game Boy games and thus easily emulatable. They were released under the title Final Fantasy Legend in the West, and there are no reliable ways to play this game legally, unfortunately, so just go for emulation. You can find our work on our website, grpgsaredead.fyi, or our Twitter at grpgsaredead, or individually at Invisiful for me, at Eat the Pen for Becky, and at Was Not Why Not for Leroy. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/deadgenre. Join us next time for episode 26 of Dead Genre Chronicles. Good night.